Recording in progress.
Start video. Okay, there's what you'll have for the video.
Well, why don't we turn it, or bring it over here and turn it around, Dick, so that it shows the speaker and the slides? Can we,
It's an idea.
or maybe on this thing?
Well, yeah, just move that thing over there. There,
That works.
put that so that you can see on here what he's doing.
Yep.
Hi, June.
I don't know if you can see us. There's Judy.
Okay.
I got a box there.
You got a box, that might work.
I knew I brought this for a reason. Hopefully that'll do.
Oh, that gets more of it up there.
Put it up on the table, a little
Maybe.
higher.
That looks a little bit better.
Move it around that.
No, it doesn't look better. That's got me in the picture.
Yeah, well, it goes to where the sound is, so that's kind of a complication.
There, that works.
No, that's me again.
That's because you're talking.
That's because you're talking.
All right, even better.
Start talking.
1, 2, here I am to talk.
Introduce them, Matt. Stand over there and introduce him.
All right,
Over there.
over here,
Over where he's.
over where he's standing.
There you go.
Doing the best I can.
All right.
All right, this is our monthly Agriculture Commission meeting. Greg Jordan, County Forester, County Extension Forester, is gonna talk to us about emerald ash borer and about small woodlot management. So without further ado, Greg, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. This is my first hybrid Zoom in-person meeting, so if this doesn't go well, just let me know.
It's certainly not your fault.
Okay. I said this is kind of a treat for me because ever since COVID, I've been doing a lot of Zoom teaching, a lot of field teaching, but I haven't really been speaking in front of people. So it's kind of nice to just be here and talking with you all. And so I want to talk about the emerald ash borer and what it means for you as landowners, and maybe some of you do own woodlots or have ash trees in your yard. I am the extension forester in Rockingham County, here to help you guys out with your woodlot, whether it's town-owned or private. And I do want to say that some of these slides, a lot of this presentation was developed by Bill Davidson with the New Hampshire Division of Forest and Lands. They have a Forest Health Bureau. There's 3 folks there. They were also available to help you out if you have issues with emerald ash borer or other forest health issues too. So
Take that for me.
I try to go by the rule when I give presentations, or at least at UNH we have this rule. I'm not sure. Okay for me to keep going, guys?
Yep, go ahead, we're just.
We go with this thing, the 10-20-30 rule, 10 slides, 20 minutes, 30-point font. I'm gonna be way over on the number of slides. I do have the 30-point font covered, and 20 minutes will be fairly close. So we'll talk about the background of the emerald ash borer, some signs and symptoms of the emerald ash borer, some current management efforts of what we're doing about here in New Hampshire, and then what it means to use some best management practices, what to do in your woodlot, what to do around your house. So is there any good news? We talk about insects quite a lot these days. Non-native invasive insects comes with a lot of bad news. Sometimes when I go to meet landowners, it's all Hemlock woolly adelgid, red pine scale, emerald ash borer. It's all dead and dying trees. I've also met with a lot of folks, who are upset about the emerald ash borer, right? And they want to know, what is the state doing to stop this, right? Yeah. Okay. Better?
We want to be able, the people want to be able to see the slides. So
Okay.
if you're talking over there, it's following you.
Great.
So if you stand in front of that, it
Cool.
might pick that up.
All right. Sounds good.
Try that.
Yeah. Ken, yeah, please direct me. So is there any good? A lot of people are upset about the emerald ash borer. They want to know what the state's doing, how are they going to stop it? And the state is definitely working to mitigate emerald ash borer, but we're not stopping it. This is a juggernaut that is going to run through the entire state. It's going to run through the entire range of ash. So it's not to be stopped, it's to be managed.
There we go.
All right. So what trees are at risk? Only members of the genus Fraxinus, that's the true ash trees. Those are, they're a member of the olive family. So fortunately, other things that are a member of the olive family is like lilac. Fortunately, emerald ash borer does not attack lilac. The only thing that attacks besides true ash that we know of is white fringe tree, which is a native tree in the southeast. We don't have it here. Maybe it's in someone's landscape. I don't know if it's cold tolerant enough here, given the weather that we're having, but fortunately, it's genus specific, so it's ash. It's not like emerald Asian longhorn beetle that can run through a lot of different species. So at least we got that going for us. So we'll do a little bit of a botany lesson. So this is an ash leaf. This is a green ash leaf, and each of these things is called a leaflet. So most all ash trees have compound leaves. So these are leaflets. The central stem is called the rachis, right? And you know this is one leaf because where these attach to this rachis, it's not woody, but if you follow this down, where it comes off the branch is woody, right? So that's one ash leaf, they're compound. They have opposite branching. The other alternative is alternate branching, or some plants have whorled branching. In New Hampshire, we can remember this acronym, MAD horse, maple ash dogwood, and horse chestnut. Those are our opposite branching trees. Right? So we don't see dogwoods too much except in landscapes. There might be some flowering dogwood around Pawtuckaway, but it's pretty rare. So we see a lot of maples and ashes in the woods. You have white ash that looks like a smile, and I don't know, I guess that's green ash. It's a little less of an indentation, but those are ash buds. The only other thing that you're gonna see that is alternate branching are maple buds. And we know sugar maple buds, nice sharp and pointy, red maple, right, kind of blunt. So it's pretty easy to identify ash trees.
Keep moving over to that
Yep.
area there, right
Sure,
there.
all right, there you go.
Watch what's showing.
and then that diamond bark, right? Classic white ash bark. That's mostly what you're gonna see around Candia. And of course, they have samaras, those oar-shaped seeds. I do get a lot of questions about mountain ash. So you might see that in the White Mountains, north of the Notches, and also a lot of people plant European mountain ash in their landscapes. They're not ash trees. It's just a misnomer. It's a horticultural term. I don't know. It's a common name. Fortunately, mountain ash, no problem. White ash, very important. Well, from an economic standpoint, it's not one of our huge part of our timber industry, but it's a really nice wood. If you're baseball fans, which I am, traditionally Louisville Sluggers are made out of white ash. I imagine they're stockpiling a lot of white ash right now. If you watch baseball and you see all the splintering bats, they're probably maple bats. So, you know, what's to happen for Major League Baseball, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Green ash, we do have native green ash, mostly in swamps near the coast in New Hampshire, but it's a very common street tree. You can think of a lot of towns where their downtown is almost 100% green ash, so they have a problem. And we have black ash, also known as brown ash in swamps. Again, not a super common tree. This one's already dead and infested with emerald ash borer, but traditionally that's the ash that's used to make baskets, right? So culturally that's significant. So where's emerald ash borer from and how did it get here? Anyone know where it's from? Well, it's from Asia. It's from China, Korea, Japan. Very similar climate that we have here. You know, same latitude. Very similar species suite. So they have ashes, they have maples, they have oaks and pines, spruces and firs. Different species, but a very similar species mix, and certainly emerald ash borer recognizes our ash trees. But it does go both ways. I can't tell you what species we have that are invasive in China, but some of our species end up there and they have issues with some of our plants and insects. So the trade does go both ways. First detected in the United States in Michigan, 2002. It was certainly here before that. It's just when we figured it out. It's probably here for maybe a decade, but no one knew what was going on with all those ash trees. Probably came in untreated wood products, pallets that weren't probably heat treated. So they were shipped here, ash borer inside, the nice green wood. They emerged, and there you go. So probably in Detroit, auto industry or something. These red dots are all the initial EAB detections in each county. So all those red dots are the first place in each of those counties where emerald ash borer has been detected. So it's quite a number of places at this point. Maine has got, it's got some in York County, and then it's got this up in Aroostook County, this disjunct population, which probably came in from Canada. At this point, they still have a big chunk of their state not infested. That's a temporary thing, it will be. Interestingly, if you look at the range of ash throughout the United States, of course, white ash, green ash, black ash covers a lot of the United States. There are other species too out in the West. There's Oregon ash and other ash species. I think the mountains and the desert, if we were counting on natural expansion, it would take forever for the ash borer to get there, but it's probably going to get a lift somehow or another up to the West Coast at some point. Interestingly, EAB, we'll talk about its life cycle, but it probably needs some good periods of cold to develop inside the tree. So this southern tier may be protected because it's a little too warm. On the north side, it's cold hardy down to like -25 or -30 degrees. So no help for us there, right? It's going to go, it is in Canada. Yeah. It probably goes as far as ash goes, before it's the boreal forest. So we may have better luck keeping it out of warm places than cold places. So maybe the southern tier is a place like a refuge that will be able to maybe retain some ash for a while. Let's come closer to home, a little more interesting for us. These dark purples are places that emerald ash borer was detected in 2021, the last growing season. Interesting, here's Brentwood. It was certainly there longer, just wasn't confirmed. It's probably been there a long, long time. Here's Candia. Your first confirmed emerald ash borer was 2018. Sounds like it's been here longer than that. I would assume it's been here a lot longer. It's been in Deerfield quite a long time. So, but again, that was your first confirmed EAB in Candia. So it's here. How did it get here? It could have come in nursery stock or how to get moved around the state. But really it came in almost certainly in firewood. We first detected it in Concord and then in Loudon near the racetrack. And well, they probably still do. They used to freely bring in firewood from all over the country. In fact, we know it came from as far as California. The Division of Forest and Lands for a while was confiscating firewood, taking it into barrels and rearing it out. And they're, from wood from all over the country, they were finding hundreds and thousands of species of insects. Some of them they couldn't even identify. They don't know what they were, right? So probably came to us in firewood. New Hampshire does have a firewood ban now. You can't bring untreated firewood into the state. Certainly it does arrive still, but we do have the right to confiscate it. And I think more and more people are getting the message not to bring it. We very much push, buying local. We have, well, not we, but there's a whole firewood scout organization and New Hampshire Parks is selling all local firewood. They really don't want people bringing in firewood from any place. That is the main vector. That's how we're going to get a lot of these invasive insects. If we ever get Asian longhorn beetle, which we don't know of, we don't have, it's probably going to come in firewood. So, way back when it first arrived in Worcester, Division of Forest and Lands went through all the tax rolls, found all the people that have camps from Worcester, and went and targeted their properties to look for the emerald ash borer. It was not found. So lucky for us. All right. Well, how does it damage trees? All right. First off, you're not going to see emerald ash borer adults until the spring. And when are you going to see them? You're going to see them when the black locust flowers. That's the right number of growing degree days. So when black locust is flowering, that's the time to start looking for emerald ash borer adults. And they emerged these very typical D-shaped holes. This side is very flat. We do have native ash borers. They don't leave this D-shaped exit hole. So when they chew their way out, that's the hole that they have. And I do have some examples if you want to check that out before we leave. So there's kind of a highlighted for you the emerald ash borer, a little adult, a little smaller than the size of a penny. Very distinct emerald coloring. See where he gets his name. Larvae, they can get quite large. And they're the only thing you're going to see in ash trees that leaves these distinct S-shaped galleries that you see snaking back and forth. You may see other galleries from other native ash borers, but nothing that snakes back and forth, S-shaped galleries. So that's a sure sign. So let's look at the life cycle a little bit. So what happens, we'll start with the eggs. Between June and August, the adults lay the eggs on the bark. Within about 10 days, they hatch, they burrow or into the tree, or they tunnel into the tree. Between August and October, they're feeding under the bark, and that's how they're damaging the trees. They're in the inner bark of the phloem, right? So there's two conductive materials in trees, xylem and phloem. I'd say xy to the sky. So the xylem brings up water from the roots to the leaves, and the phloem flows down. It brings all the food from the leaves down into the tree. So by their feeding activity, they disrupt that flow. So basically, this tree starves to death, loses all its conductive material. Here's that classic S-shaped gallery, and you can see when it's little, it makes these small S-shape, but as it's growing, see how they get wider and wider and wider until it's ready to emerge. Between May and July, the adults do emerge. This is like a 1 in a million picture here that someone got. And they come out, they spend a few days, maybe a week feeding on ash leaves, just so they can build up some energy to lay eggs. That doesn't really bother the trees at all. It's the feeding inside the tree that's very damaging. And so we do have some lookalikes. Here's the emerald ash borer. I've done some trapping in the past. You may have seen some of those purple sticky traps in trees around. We catch a lot of these bronze birch borers or the two-line chestnut borers. They're related to the emerald ash borer. You can see how similar they look, but the coloring is different. The eyes, when you look closely, are much different too. A lot of the calls that we get are for this one, the 6-spotted tiger beetle. That's that one that's really, really fast and on the ground quite a bit. Most of the time when we get a call, it's a false alarm, it's this. But it does have that coloring, doesn't it? If you didn't know insects at all, you would certainly say that's emerald green. Right? But there's that kind of bullet-shaped ash borer. That's a big problem for us. Toledo, Ohio, 2006. Same street, same trees, 2009. Right? So it's a tree killer. Here it is, at least. In China, where it evolved with the ash, it acts like our native ash borers. They attack stress trees. Here, it attacks everybody. Hasn't really learned how to behave yet, right? So it's attacking healthy trees, like a virus, you know. It'll figure it out. But pretty devastating. So let's look at the typical mortality curve. It can be here for someplace for 5-6 years. You won't know it. There'll be no visible symptoms. The trees will look healthy. So if EAB really arrived in Candia in 2018, you're somewhere around here right now. If it arrived a little bit earlier, you're a little bit further out here, right? Maybe you're in the 5 to 8 year range. You can see the mortality curve. It's very slow. There's a low population. It's feeding in the trees, but trees are tough. They could tolerate some insect activity, but it gets worse and worse, and the population grows, and then the mortality curve it shoots up. By the time you get out to about 15 years, it's probably asymptomatic. What am I saying? Asymptotic. I'm sorry. It's been a while since I've taken math class. Probably doesn't reach 100%, but it gets pretty darn close to 100% mortality for the big trees. There's going to be some trees that escape, right? There's going to be some small trees here and there in the woods that are far away from other ash trees. So it won't be 100% mortality, but it's going to be pretty close. It's going to be approaching 100%. So again, what to look for in your woodlots or your street trees or your yard trees, T-shaped exit holes. That's a dead giveaway. That's the only thing that's going to leave a T-shaped exit hole. The S-shaped or serpentine galleries. You may have to peel away the bark, but the tree is probably going to be losing its bark anyways. There won't be a lot to lose to peel that bark away. Or maybe you're looking at logs or firewood and you want to check it out. Epicormic branching. Anytime you see trees with epicormic branching sprouting out of the stem, it's a sign of stress. In the case of ash, the conductive material where the ash borer typically starts up higher in the tree is damaged. The tree is not able to move water or nutrients between the two. So in a move of desperation, here it is with these dormant buds on the stem, it's sprouting out of the stem. So whatever the reason, that tells you the tree is super stressed. And probably the easiest thing to find is the blonding and the woodpecker activity. Woodpeckers do love eating ash borer. They're great food for woodpeckers. They just can't eat enough of them. But once they know they're in a tree, they will pick away at that and they will leave behind this blondish yellow inner bark. This is another good example. This is at my daughter's school. These trees are gone at this point, but the ash borer is not deep into the tree. So all the woodpecker has to do is just scrape away the outer bark and there the larvae are. So this is the thing. You can see this driving around down Route 101 at 65 miles per hour, once it gets really bad.
And that's caused by the woodpecker?
Yeah, it just uses its beak to scrape away the bark and then find the larvae and eat them, because the larvae are really just underneath there. They're not like deep, like a pileated that's digging deep into a tree for ants. These larvae just stay right under here, so they're easy to find for woodpeckers.
Oh, is it the woodpecker that's killing the tree or the larva?
The larva. Woodpeckers really don't kill trees, they just find problems. They're just really good. If there's no ash borer in this, they'll come and flick around for a minute. No, they know. I guess they can hear. They just know. Let's move on to something where there's better foraging for us. So woodpeckers aren't killing the tree. They're just alerting you to the problem. So they're kind of like our signal, our signal in the night that there's a problem here. It's fortunate that the EAB stays in the outer bark too, because if we make wood products out of it, when you square it up, you debark it and square it up, those are killed, right? So the wood is still good if you get it before it goes really bad. So that's fortunate as well. So what are we doing in New Hampshire? This is what a lot of people would like to know about. First of all, so it's not an eradication thing. It's not feasible. That's not happening. Ash borer is not going away, at least not anytime soon. It's about detecting new infestations early, slowing the spread of ash mortality to give people time to decide what to do about their woodlots or their yard trees or their street trees, and just providing guidance and education. So, and it's not like an ALB situation in Worcester or New York City where, you know, the state's coming in and removing trees out of desperation, quarantine. That's not happening. It's a landowner's choice. That's the New Hampshire way, right? So control is a combination of biological control. That's probably our long-term, not solution, but control method. Chemical control, which is effective. Trap trees, which maybe that concept is passing us by a little bit. Sanitation, you know, destroying infested material. So there are a number of natural enemies, most of them from Asia, but they're specific to EAB, right? So they're highly vetted. They're being released now. You know, they're not going to eat anything else but EAB larvae, right? So we're pretty sure of that. So hopefully we haven't made a mistake by introducing new insects. But the early results are good. I'm not an entomologist, but here's some of the species. Tetrasticus plantapentii. They lay their eggs within EAB larvae. Then, you know, their eggs hatch and then they eat their way out of the emerald ash borer larvae. And here's all the wasp larvae. That's where an EAB larvae was, and you can see who's taken over, right? So they're pretty gruesome. They eat their way out of the bug. But that's life, right? Here's another one, Obius agrilae, and she lays her eggs inside an EAB egg, and then they eat their way out of that. So they're very effective. They're super tiny. They don't sting like the other wasps, so we would probably never even notice them, but they do a good job of it. They're good at what they do. And then Spathius gallinae, that also lays its with this long proboscis, or I'm not even sure what this is called, but it probes into the larvae and also lays eggs inside, and they eat their way out, kind of like movie Aliens or something. Right? But they're effective, right? This is our long-term. So this is probably our long-term solution. So what's going to happen if I'll make a prediction. Emerald ash borer is going to run through all our big ash in the state, almost all of them. There'll be small trees that survive, and there's a future for ash in New Hampshire, but our ash population is going to crash. Ash borer is going to have to fall because it's not going to have anything to really eat, and then all these predatory species are going to sort of keep them in check, kind of like we have gypsy moth now, but we have some fungi and viruses that have been introduced that do a good job of keeping it in check. So
Who's gonna eat them?
I don't know. I don't think that anything has to. I don't think we have to worry about them. I hope. Yeah. But if not, we'll have to introduce something else to eat them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's the way that world works.
Yeah. I think we've really learned some lessons. This stuff's pretty highly vetted. There's always surprises, but this is going to be, I think, our way out of this. So eventually, we're gonna have ash borer now forever. It's never going to be gone unless something weird happens. So these will help keep us in check. So welcome EAB. It's here. Right. Chemical treatment. It's pretty important, especially for landscape trees. It works. There are different treatments. We'll talk about that. I'm not a licensed pesticide applicator, but I'll talk generally about treatments. There are things called soil drenches where there's chemicals applied to the soil and the tree sucks it up. All these are systemic insecticides, so they go inside, and the insect, when they feed on it, it's not selected the EAB, but it kills EAB. It kills other things that would feed inside of a tree as well.
But this would only be effective in a shade tree or a yard tree.
Yeah, I mean, it would work.
Commercially, it would work, but you couldn't.
You'd run out of money. I mean, how would we treat, you know, ash is like 6% of our trees in our state, so how would we treat 10 million trees, you know?
Yeah.
So but it's really good if you have historic trees or really important trees or, you know, trees are just part of the town's character, it works. And it's expensive, yeah, but it's not prohibitively expensive for a small number of trees. So you can do soil drenches. There are things called basal bark treatments where they're oil and there's insecticide in the oil and it's sprayed on the stem and absorbs into the stem. And then there's things like this where there's stem injections, and there's a whole bunch of equipment, different ways to deliver that. These like hypodermic needles, the holes are drilled. Sometimes they have rubber nipples, and that stay in the tree. And it's kind of like when you do this though, it's like when you tap a sugar maple, you can't use the same hole. So the next time they have to treat that, they're gonna have to find a new spot all around the tree. But it will save the tree. Right? It's gotta be a healthy tree because all these chemicals goes inside the tree get moved by the tree. The tree's suffering. It's not gonna move the chemical all around. And it's not going to be effective. So you got to be proactive on this. You want to treat the tree, time to do it is when it's still pretty healthy. Our state entomologist, and you can find this online, has a little guide about, what chemicals to use and when. Again, licensed pesticide applicators are probably the best bet for these. But homeowners, if you're on your own land and you're not putting yourself out for hire, and you're not within 25 feet of a wetland, you could probably treat your own trees. You go on I don't shop on Amazon, but you could probably go on Amazon and get all this stuff, right? If you wanted to buy like the injection kit, you can buy this, like $1,200 to $1,500. It's kind of like buying a printer though. Like if you had a business, that's not too expensive, but when you go to buy the chemical, it's pretty expensive, right? So like they give the printer away and then buy the cartridges, So you're looking at a lot of money. And remember, you got to treat these every 2 to 5 years. So it's not a one-time thing. It's like, I'm keeping this up for the life of the tree sort of thing. There are 3 main chemicals. It's imidacloprid, which is actually a pretty common insecticide. Yeah, it's on your dogs. Yeah, right. And I think it's even approved for like use on food in places for certain things. And
What's DBH?
diameter at breast height. Yeah, I'm sorry. I we're so used to acronyms, I just gloss over that stuff. Yeah, diameter breast height. So most trees, foresters measure trees diameter breast height, 4.5 feet above the ground.
Okay, and it's diameter around it.
Diameter, yeah. Foresters are usually interested in, our
Diameter
tapes.
breast height.
Yeah, we're more interested in diameter because when you saw a log, it's more about like what can you saw, but it doesn't matter how far around it is, right? Yeah. There's 3 main chemicals, imidacloprid, which is in Frontline. You can also go to like Lowe's and Home Depot and you can buy things that you can treat your tree with at a pretty low cost. But again, you wouldn't be going through your woodlot and doing this, but if you had a tree in your yard that's healthy, you could treat yourself for $50 or so. It's reasonable. Yeah. And then, dinotephorin, that can be applied as a soil drench or maybe that basal bark treatment. When you get into the pros, they're using emamectin and benzoate. So one of those stem injections, that's what they're using. That's what the pros use. That's probably the most effective. It's also better for the bigger trees. It just gives you more bang for the buck. If you have trees that already have more than 50% dieback though, it's not worth treating them. It's time to let them go. You know how ash trees are when they die? For such a strong species with strong wood, when it dies, it just falls apart really quick. So if they're not healthy, you got to really think about removing them. So what does it mean for you? Federal quarantine, deregulated, 2021. There's no federal quarantine zone anymore. There's no federal regulations. I would still want to be careful if I moved across state lines because some states have regulations, but the feds have sort of moved from a control or a contain to a management. We've realized it's moving. New Hampshire, we used to have a county by county quarantine. So when it first arrived in Merrimack County, Ashwood products could not leave Merrimack County except under some very specific conditions. It's deregulated at this point. So ash products, doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, but you can move them within the state without any legal implications. So if we look a little closer at the state, so this is a New Hampshire Division of Forest and Lands map. This red is generally infested. So it's a lot of the state. That means not every ash tree has it, but any ash tree in this red could. These little oranges have filled in. This is the potential expansion within 10 miles of the red. That means the AAB is coming pretty quick. It could even be there at that point. The only place you're gonna find green at this point really is northern Grafton, and Coas is still not infested. It's our last holdout, but that's a temporary thing. Yeah, so again, remember the ash borer is plenty cold tolerant down to -25, -30, so there's nothing to hold it back. If there's ash trees, it's going. So if you're in the generally infested area, the time to act is, or the potential expansion now is the time to act. If you don't, it's too late. So we're down to best management practices. The regulations are by and large gone. Naturally, EAB might spread a mile or two per year on its own. It's spread all the way from Michigan to Maine and to Georgia.
How does it actually spread? Do these, the adults fly?
They do fly. Yep, they're more than capable of flying. But they won't fly that far if they don't have to. They just go from the next ash tree to the next ash tree.
Yeah.
But what happened is, again, they hitched rides in wood products, firewood, so they moved 100 times quicker than they would have naturally. So it's on us. But at the beginning, we didn't even know they were here. So give us a pass on that. But what to do? What can you do to help to kind of slow this? Only transport logs after September 1st and have them processed by June 1st. That's because all the adults have emerged at that point and they've died, they've laid their eggs and they're inside the tree. So if you move it in that period, nothing's going to get out of the tree until the next year, right? So it's safe to move the logs then. Best to ship them to mills or facilities that would like debark them immediately, because when you debark it, remember the ash borer is real close to the surface. That pretty much eliminates the issue there. Or confirm the logs aren't infested, so maybe you look over the logs, you peel some bark, you don't see any galleries, you don't see any evidence in your woodlot, you can feel pretty confident you don't have ash borer, but probably do here in Candia. If you move in firewood, again, there's nothing that says you can't move it. If it's going more than 5 miles, it'd be nice to separate out the ash. And I've actually seen some firewood dealers do that. And it's not the worst thing in the world. I wouldn't mind getting a load of all ash firewood. It's pretty good firewood, right? So a lot of them have been separating out the ash. It was really tough when the quarantine first came in and you were marking a woodlot, and maybe you had an ash tree or two that got mixed in the cordon pile. It was really tough to keep that separate. And I'm sure some of it got moved around. I've even been part of working with some loggers who maybe they sent some logs to a sawmill that was in the quarantine zone at the time, and the mill said, put the log back on the truck and get out of here. We don't want your log here, you know? So they were pretty serious about it then, but now those days are over. But if it's traveling far, maybe separate out the ash if you can. If it's within Candia, well, no problem. You're not really moving it too far. Or hey, season it in place for 12 months. Because once you do that, you cut the tree down, the tree's dead. If there's an overwintering ash borer larvae that makes it out of there, fine, but it's not going to get reinfested again. So if you season it and you sell it as cut, split, and dried, or cut, split, seasoned, then you're really not going to be moving the ash borer around. So just try to understand the life cycle of the bug and just move it after the insects have emerged, you know. Or you can deliver it after September 1, because again, there's nothing flying around, nothing coming out of the trees, and have it burned by next June. Easier said than done. And probably a lot of campgrounds, people brought ash, they meant to burn it, and they didn't, and it stayed at the campground, and then it got out. But we can do things to slow the spread and just help out our neighbors. So if you have ash on your woodlot, you want to know you got it, and just work under the assumption that if I don't harvest the tree now, and I'm on like a 10 or 20 year cutting cycle, when I come back for harvest next time, the tree's probably going to be dead. So it kind of makes sense if you have saw log size ash and you do have a woodlot and you're having a harvest, you want to probably take out those larger ash. Again, it's economically smart, but also those big ash trees can house a lot of EAB larvae. So by removing the bigger trees, you're actually helping to slow the spread. That doesn't mean you shouldn't leave some trees. Anything 6 inches and smaller, you should probably, I would suggest leaving it. First of all, those small trees do produce a lot of seed. So we get a future seed source. And ash have male and female trees, so you need a few so they can crossbreed. But also, emerald ash borer is still going to be attracted to those. So if you completely wipe out your ash and your woodlot, then they're just going to go on to the next woodlot. So you're actually kind of helping to slow the spread by keeping the small trees there, and it'll support a smaller population. So it's just a way to keep things in check for a little bit longer. Anyone recognize the standing dead tree?
Chestnut.
It's chestnut, yeah. This is in Canterbury. Still standing up near Shaker Village. And so, like I said, don't cut all your ash trees. We don't know for sure, but we think we learned a lesson from that, which is, everyone salvaged all their chestnut, pre-salvaged it. They knew the chestnut blight was coming. And by and large, what a valuable wood, it was all cut. And now we're looking back and thinking that we may have lost some genetic diversity, and maybe chestnut might have done a little bit better if we had not pre-salvaged so much of it. Some of it might have survived. There may have been some that were resistant to the chestnut blight. So we're trying to learn some lessons here. So we don't need to overreact and cut all our ash unnecessarily. If you're a homeowner, a lot of us have nice ash around our house. You got to determine if you have them, learn to identify them. What are going to become hazards? Because when ash gets, for whatever reason, when ash dies, it just falls apart. The limbs just start coming down. You don't want to park your truck under that, right? Identify high value trees, and those are high value to you, the ones that you want. And just realize there's 3 options. Remove the tree. Better do it actually when it's healthy, so it's easier and safer to remove. Treat it with chemicals, or just do nothing and say, well, it's far away from the house, the barn, it's in the back 40. I'm okay if it dies and just falls over. But realize you have to make a choice on all your trees. There's no, I hope it doesn't get it, because it's going to get it. So you have to make a choice, sadly. So if you're in the red and orange zones, which you are in Candia, you got to make decisions now. If you have a healthy ash tree at the beginning of the summer and you want it, this is the time to treat it. If you wait, you're going to miss the window. There's one of those nipples that stays in the tree that is used for an injection. Again, there are many different systems. This one just happens to use that rubber grommet. For any of your woodlot questions, even some of your agricultural pest stuff, NH Bugs is a website that Extension, Forest and Lands, and Department of Ag maintain together. And it's kind of our clearinghouse for all these invasive insects. And the website just seems to keep growing and growing and growing. For you folks, if you grow crops, the spotted lanternfly is on our doorstep. And that's kind of an ag. For the forest, we don't worry about it too much. It's kind of a messy insect. But for agricultural crops, it could be damaging. So that might be one you want to go check out. Spotted lanternfly on our website, nhbugs.org. You might want to know about that one, because that one is probably about to arrive. Again, it's not as devastating as EAB, but it's going to be an agricultural pest.
Where is it about to arrive from?
Pennsylvania, New Jersey. It lays its egg masses on about anything. So like if the shipments come up from New Jersey, a truck it could be, I don't know, Jersey barrier, it could be concrete, it could be shingles, I don't know. It just lays its egg on anything, cars, right? So it's like not something we're going to keep out very easily. It's not something to panic about, but it's just if you grow crops, you grow grapes, I don't know, things like that, you want to know about this one and be aware of it. As you learn about this and other pests too, a lot of people want to tell us if they find something of interest or something concerning. If you go to NH Bugs, there's actually a reporting form on there, and you can just put in some of your contact info and upload a picture, like from a cell phone. And I can guarantee you there will be eyes on it. We have an entomologist on our staff. Probably within 24 hours, he's going to look at it. If it's suspicious, they're going to dispatch someone to come look at the problem with you. Right? So we take, this isn't a form that just gets lost in the internet. This gets seen very quickly, and people take it seriously. So nhbugs.org, anything forest pests, even ag pests, maybe Department of Agriculture might have better people for that. But even that stuff, if you see something alarming, like you think it's spotted lanternfly, go ahead, throw this on. If it's no big deal, it's just an email, and we just say, hey, no problem, and we erase it, no big deal. So there is the end of the EAB section. It's already 8 o'clock. Any questions?
No, I think you covered.
That was
Okay.
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry,
Very
probably
interesting.
talking 100 miles an hour and garbling my words, but
So once that tree is bonded and so forth, it's probably, that tree is toast at that point, or?
yeah, if it
If
has
you
a
wanna
little
see some
blonding, on it-
samples, all you gotta do is go across
yeah.
by the pond park.
If you have a little blonding, it's really about the crown. If it has a full crown but a
Mhm.
little blonding,
Maybe.
it's maybe,
Yeah.
yeah. I'd probably treat it,
Yep.
or if I really love that
Yeah.
tree. But usually when you see a lot of blonding, it's because the
Yeah.
woodpeckers have targeted that tree.
Yeah.
They know.
There's a lot of those trees, I just drive up 107 from here to Pittsfield, and the number of trees that are just, especially this spring, that are just
Yeah.
yellow.
And for me, I live in Stratford. It was just like 2 years ago during the drought. The trees were stressed, I think, and all of a sudden, in July, they were all starting to be blonded around Bull Lake.
Yep.
And the first time I ever saw blonding was on Church Street in Deerfield. That was like the first time, not far from here,
Yep.
just completely blonded trees. Yeah. So it's kind of a sad state, but we have some pretty smart people working on this at the state level. And I think ash has a future. It's just gonna be, it's not gonna be like we remembered it for a while. We kind of take ash for granted, but so it's kind of sad, but it's not too sad of a story. It'll make a comeback. So our kids and grandkids will appreciate ash, I hope. Yeah. Baseball bats. Yeah. Any other questions? Anytime you have questions, you can call me or call Forest and Lands, and we're here to help you guys, figure out ash issues.
Oh, that's great, thank you.
Should we do the other talk, or is it too late for you?
Fine.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Before you go, I'd like to grab copies of those two presentations.
Sure.
Take your
Yeah.
stick and and we'll put it in my computer.
Yeah, this is actually the stick for my
Yep.
for this, but I can get one and we
Yep.
can transfer it over, not a problem. All right. Any of you own woodlots or?
Well,
Yeah, small.
yeah.
Yeah.
18 acres.
Oh, that-
And, half of that's field.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Well, this would
10
be-
acres maybe.
Well, this would be this. So this is kind of homage, thinning the garden, using crop tree management to grow quality saw logs faster. And thinning the garden, I used to work with a logger, Greg Morse, he's died since, but whenever we'd be looking at land, even some Candia, like town-owned land, he did a lot of logging around here. And we'd always run into people and, oh, you're gonna cut trees, you're gonna cut a lot of trees. And he said, no, we're just thinning the garden, just a light thinning. That was his,
Yeah.
that's how he explained it. And kind of a forestry snob, it's like, oh, it's thinning the forest is more complicated than thinning radishes or something. But in a way, it's not, maybe it isn't, So I shouldn't be such a forestry snob. So it's kind of thinning the garden, right? And if let's move on here. So if you're gonna make any money with trees in New Hampshire, you're growing saw logs or veneer, and we'll talk about that. Firewood, pulp, chipwood, from an economic standpoint, you're losing money on your land. But if you're going to saw logs and you have a land that's in current use, not including your house, you can totally pay for that land over time. It's a good investment. People will get upset because it doesn't, like, cutting trees doesn't pay for all that taxes, but I'm a homeowner, taxes are pretty expensive on homes, right? So it's tough to ask trees to pay for your house and all your taxes. But so what's a crop tree? Well, it's any tree that you want to keep in your woodlot, in your woods, that's going to be valuable in the future. And I'll default to economic value, but it's not just economic value. If you're a hunter and you're interested in oak trees for acorns, well, red oak could be a crop tree, right? So it's just a tree that you want to grow and you have a reason for doing that. And I like to think about the value of trees. I think a lot more about trees than just value, but that's important. It's tough to separate forestry and money, they kind of go hand in hand. So red oak, definitely classic crop tree. Black birch, actually quite a high value tree. We used to think of it as a weed in a way, but grows really nice, high quality wood. Yellow birch, sugar maple, of course. That could be a crop tree if you're a sugar bush or for timber. So it's kind of a forester's favorite. You know, we don't have a ton of it around here, but we do. White pine, of course. Big pine is king. As far as the oaks go, though, I mean, white oak, black oak, those are very valuable logs. Actually, white oak is very hot right now for whatever reason. Red maple makes a nice log. For wildlife, I like to think of hickory. You know, the timber value is not super high around here, but those are species that I think about. So crop trees, right? And crop tree management, I like it because it's about what to grow versus what to go. And so you could go into a woodlot. Sometimes I would be marking, even in Candia, some woodlots with a lot of low quality trees from a timber standpoint, you know, forked and wavy and all that. And I'd be like, what to go? I mean, there's a lot that should go here. It was tough to start. Like, where do I start marking? You know, what tree do I put paint on first? But if you went around and said, well, there's a nice tree, let's start with this. There's something to work off of, right? So you thought more about what you're keeping as opposed to what's going. And that's just a way to think about thinning these trees. And to give an economic framework as we go through this quick presentation, try to wrap it up in 10 or 15 minutes. You thin trees because they should grow faster. And you help turn lower value products into higher value products. So as you go up in size, you jump up in these classes. So you go from like a chipwood, which is valueless, basically. A stick of firewood or pulp is worth more. A saw log, even better. If you get to a veneer log, which is used for high-end like furniture and cabinets, even more valuable. So you want to go up in those product classes if you want to, you know, make some money selling trees. And you can promote better species composition. Like, oh, I have a stand with aspen and paper birch and some sugar maple. Well, I'd like to promote the sugar maple for whatever reason. So I can sort of control that through thinning by selectively removing some of the species. Here's a graphic we made at Extension just to kind of think about trees and products. We want roundwood in trees if we're thinking economics. Ideally saw logs and veneer, the high end. And we'd love to have a woodlot full of these with the lower stems, all beautiful saw logs. And you have some of these in Candia. One place that you're gonna have a ton of these is the Flint Road Town Forest. There's a lot of beautiful, beautiful trees there. That was lightly thinned years ago. I was part of that when I was consulting. That's also the woodlot where the logger's $300,000 machine was burned. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. Beautiful, but they did a beautiful job and nice trees. That's gonna have a lot of these in the future, saw logs. And that's a good thing. You also have roundwood like firewood. Definitely a product a lot of landowners and homeowners are interested in. Loggers too, but it's actually kind of a low value. Bowl chips. Bowl chips are chipwood, but they're like in Rockingham County, our facility, we have a biomass facility that we make heat wood. We take in bollwood, which is stems. It's like a firewood pile, but then it gets chipped. There's no branches, there's no leaves or anything. It's just the stems of the trees. Also, like for pine, some places that make pellets will take in bollwood. So it's a little bit more valuable than the biomass chips, which is like everything, just tops, you know. Pulpwood, if you can sell it, our markets are pretty poor for pulpwood these days in New Hampshire, but if it's a low value, but it can be sold. Pallet logs, lower quality, sometimes literally used to make pallets. There is one type of pallet log that comes into this area called the mat log, a construction log. You see them on power lines when they're doing work and they lay down those wood roads.
Red oak.
They'll use, anything that's straight enough and big enough except for aspen. And those are actually quite valuable. So those are pallet logs, but they're working their way down into here. They're pretty valuable. Then you got the top of trees. Whole tree chips is like biomass. Used to have Schiller Station in Newington, Portsmouth, make electricity. We still have a few in the state, but it's suffering. We do make mulch out of the tops of trees like PR Russell and Brentwood. We'll make mulch. And some of the parts of the trees are emergeable. You have some trees that are merchantable. There's really nothing to do with them except run through a chipper. Some that are low quality and then some that are high quality, and they usually have other products in the top. So these days, biomass chips, even bowl chips, they're worth between $0 a ton, 25 cents a ton, or some people are paying to get rid of them off their woodlot right now. So you see those big trucks, 30 tons in the truck, that landowner might be paying to get rid of that. Or that's the way the market is today. We'll convert everything to tons so we can compare apples to apples. Pulpwood, firewood, some of the lower quality pallet logs are worth about $5 a ton. If we, so this is again, looking at apples to apples tons. Some saw logs, $40 a ton. Now we're going up, that's 8 times more. Some veneer logs, $200 or more per ton. So this is what we want to be growing up in here if you want to make money on selling hardwoods especially. Pine can always be sold, nice quality saw logs. For hardwoods especially, you want that quality. So $200 plus a ton. I've helped to sell loads of hardwood veneer that sold for $5,000-$6,000, right? So then the landlord was really making some money on their investment. So with trees, especially hardwoods, it's the value that counts, not the volume. So in an acre, you could have a chock full of wood, 150 tons of pulpwood. It's worth $150 if you clear cut it. Right? So we want saw logs. And here's some examples of why value is so important, not volume. This is from a stand in Tennessee. This acre had 441 trees. Of course, they measured all the trees down to 1 inch, right? So that's pretty small trees. But out of those 441 trees, the top 10 most valuable trees accounted for 45% of the timber value. When you got to just 50 trees, you get 93% of the timber value. So the other 391 trees had 7% of the timber value, right? So most of our valuable trees are just in a few trees. Here's a little closer to home. This is Connecticut. This acre is actually averaged $4,205 per acre of timber. That's pretty high. That's Connecticut oak. In New Hampshire, if we had an acre that had $2,000 worth of timber value, that'd be pretty nice. You'd be very impressed with all the oak and the pine on that acre. There's Connecticut for you, I guess. But between only 10 and 20 trees on that acre was 50% of the value. Between 40 and 60, they're up to 90%. Right, and there's over 100 trees per acre on here on this this stand. So it's really just a small number of trees where all the timber value is. Here's another way to look at it. This is a stand from New Hampshire. I didn't make this example, so I don't recall where the stand is. However, if you look at the volume by product on tons per acre, here's the biomass. Those are those chips. And maybe pulpwood, saw logs, and firewood. So that's the volume. So a lot of chips, bit of firewood, bit of saw logs. If we look at the value, 91% of that value is in those saw logs. The biomass is even small, and just a little bit in firewood. So here's all the value. So if I'm a forester marking a stand, or especially if I'm a logger cutting a stand, and I want, I can cut this stuff all day, and it's tough to make a living, right? But if I can cut a little bit of this, that's good. Yeah. So you understand where the loggers are coming from, right? It's tough to make a living if you're cutting, chipwood. It's like selling any product, I guess. This is just a little example I put together. So one red oak log, 85 board feet at $600 per 1,000, selling it, which is not the highest end of the market, but it's a little bit above the mid. That's a nice quality tree, worth about $51 at one log.
How do you correlate the cords to the pounds, tons?
For pine or no?
When you're selling firewood, you sell it by the cord.
We sell
You
by
get
the
a couple
cord.
$100 for a cord, 2 cords.
Yeah, it's
$200
about,
a cord is about what it's going for now. $400 a year I may be spending on 4 cords.
Yep. It's about 2.4 tons per cord.
How much?
2.4 roughly.
Okay.
That's an average, but it's about that. I can actually get you the firm figures, but I'm pretty sure that's what our New Hampshire DRA, our Department of Revenue
All I
Administration
know is
uses.
I gotta cut it, split it, pick it up, put it in, and each time it's
Yeah, so if you move
10
a ton
cords, that's
if you move a ton of like mixed hardwood, a cord of mixed hardwood, you probably moved about 2.4 tons of wood over time. Yeah. If it's oak, you probably moved more.
I'm moving 20 tons of cord 4 times a year.
Yeah, right. Yeah. A load of firewood, you know what triaxle is, the smaller log truck, that takes between 7 and 8 cords of firewood. The tractor trailers have about 11 or so. That whole load is worth to a landowner about $75. So that one log was 51, that was 75. Those boxes of chips that you see rolling down 101, they have 30 to 34 tons.
Where are they going with that now? I mean, there's almost no biomass plant.
Yeah, Burgess Power in Berlin, Stored Solar in Bethlehem, Alexandria, Tamworth.
I thought that one in Alexandria was.
I think it's still open,
Is it open?
but they run intermittently when they can.
Okay.
They sell power on the open market. They don't have contracts.
Yeah,
And so when natural gas is really cheap and it's not big demand, they're probably running now because they need the electricity. But there are times when they're completely shut down. So it's a very tough market to be in. That's why you're lucky to get 25 cents a ton. Let's say that you do, the entire 30-ton box of chips is worth about $7.50 to a landowner.
You can't buy it.
It costs more
How many
money.
gallons of gas is that?
It's a lot. It depends on the truck, but be lucky to get 8 to 10 miles a gallon on those.
Dismal.
Yeah, pretty dismal, right?
Mm.
And some of them are negative. Sometimes the logs, I'll take it away for free, and they're not giving you a sour deal. It's the best they can do, right? So one log, $51. It's not. You want to grow logs, right? Everyone wants saw logs. Just for the heck of it, white pine, I converted everything to tons, $150 per 1,000 board feet. Let's see, it's about every 500 board feet is a little more than a ton. So, no, 100, it's 4.3. Oh yeah, 150 divided by 4.3. So 1,000 board feet is about 4.3 tons, $34.88 per ton. Chips, basically zero. Pulp, pine pulp today, zero. There's no place, hardly any place to send it. It's got to go to Maine. So it's quite a trip from Candia, any place down here. It's basically valueless. Or maybe if it goes to, PR Russell or something, but it's not a high value product. Want to grow saw logs. Okay, so we want to grow saw logs. So you get a forester or you want to thin your woodlot. Traditionally, we do an area-wide thinning. So we thin the whole stand, right? You get nice trees, you want to take out the junk, leave the good stuff, so you give it a light thinning. So in even age stands, a lot of foresters use these. They're called stocking guides or stocking charts. So you got on this vertical axis, basal area per acre, that's a measure of stand density. The higher the basal area, like 150 is a really dense stand, and 50 is like not a lot of trees. So it gets very dense up here. Here's trees per acre. If you get those, you do a timber inventory. You find out your stands here. That's very dense. Average diameter is about 8 inches. Above this A line, it's overstocked, too many trees. We got to thin it down. And this between the A and the B, it's fully stocked. But if we wanted the best growth on saw logs, we'd have it right at this B line. The forester would take it right down, right there, perfect. Right, so. But here, they didn't want to cut too many trees, but they took it down. We're in the good growing zone. We're growing good saw logs. And it grows back up again, right? Trees get a little bit bigger. And we want to take it back down. Now we're growing, the trees are growing pretty quickly. So that's what your forester might do if they're working on your woodlot. They're marking the trees, taking out the junk, trying to get the good trees to grow. You don't want to get it down here because then you're understocked and you're not utilizing the growing space enough. So these C's represent crop trees, really nice trees, right? And so the forest comes through and they mark it. And that's good. They took out the junk and they left the good stuff. But if these are the 4 valuable trees here, you maybe could have done better thinning these to make these trees grow quicker, right? As opposed to the whole stand. So traditional thinning, it's an area-wide thinning. So the forest is looking at the whole acre and they're trying to make the acre grow good. But some of those trees on that acre are, like firewood or junky pulp. Doesn't matter if they grow so good. It matters more if these nice trees grow good though. So crop tree management, it's kind of, it's cool because it focuses on individual trees and it's something accessible. So if you have a farm woodlot or your small woodlot, something that you can do, and you don't have to have a forestry degree to figure this out. We have this really nice crop tree, and we sort of pretend we're looking down on it. Here's some crosshairs, and we're looking at it 4 quadrants, and we want to know, is this tree free to grow?
Do you consider where the sun is?
Absolutely. Yeah, I always do that, especially if I'm doing a traditional thinning, because you got to get more bang for the buck by thinning on the sun side. So this tree here, is it free to grow? Well, it's got 4 quadrants. It's got a free to grow rating of 2, right? It's got one side open and this side open, but these are not. There's competition here.
I want the sun on that side.
Yeah, okay, perfect. We don't have to touch it, right? But if we really wanted this oak tree to grow real nice, we'd probably want that, right? We don't want too open.
It depends on where your crown is too.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. We don't want too open though either. We don't grow in a field because then it's gonna start, the stem's not gonna be clear anymore, right? It's gonna start sprouting off the stem, and that's not good for clear wood. But if we're just looking at the crown, that's good. So what's the free to grow rating now? It's 4, right? So you go and, oh, here's a nice tree. This is a crop tree. I want to grow this one. I look up, there's a tree touching there and there and there and there. Okay, I want to just do a crown touching release. Anything touching the crown, thin those trees out. And in between that, don't worry about what's going on there. So that's our alternative to that beeline thinning, that traditional thinning, crop tree management. What's the free to grow rating for this tree?
0.
That's right, 0. Now what?
1, 2.
All the ones around there are pines.
Yeah,
That's
right.
a nice big, that's a nice big oak.
Yeah. I like growing pines too, If you give me an acre of average pine or an acre of oak, I'll take the pine usually.
I'll take the pines down.
Yeah.
And then I'll cut them into 6 by 6, 8 by 8s and use them.
Yeah.
32 feet long.
Yep. So that's what we want. If we want that tree to grow really fast, give it a crown touching release. We don't have to worry about all the fancy stocking charts and all the things that foresters are worried, thinking about. We don't have to do a formal inventory. And we don't have to worry about what's going on in between those trees. In fact, we don't really want to do anything. Just leave the other trees be. Just worry about your crop trees. So here's a stand. We have those crop trees, those 4 really nice trees. Instead of an area-wide thinning where we might only release on 1 or 2 sides of the crop tree, we thin it and now we get maybe 3 or 4 sides to release. This tree is actually beneath the canopy. They don't worry about that. When you're thinning trees, if the crowns aren't competing, it doesn't really matter. There's usually plenty of nutrients and water to go around in our sites, but sunlight's a limiting factor. So those trees below the canopy, you don't have to worry about those at all. It's really about managing sunlight. Maybe if you have a super droughty site, maybe then you want to worry about water, but most of our sites like in Candia, most of them got enough water to go around and nutrients too for trees. Maybe not for crops, but trees are doing all right. If that would be too heavy of a cut for you, you don't adjust the amount of release, you adjust the amount of crop trees. So you go, oh, that's cutting too many trees for me, it has to be way too open. Okay, so you drop those as crop trees and you just worry about those 2. And again, you just leave the rest of it untouched. You do get a little bit of bang, by thinning this, that helps this tree a little bit in this one too. So those trees will grow a little bit quicker, but not as quick as these ones with the crown touching release. What trees do you pick? You want the trees that are dominant or co-dominant in the stand. So that's represented by the D for dominant. So if you're standing on a hill, these are the trees you see from the top of the hill. They're clearly expressing their dominance. These intermediate trees are just poking up. If it's a species like a sugar maple that you really want, maybe you'd give it a shot. These suppressed trees that kind of lost the battle already, you don't worry about them in crop tree management. You just let them stay.
Where do you put a black walnut in that picture?
Yeah. Well,
You
we don't have them, right?
leave the little ones
I have
underneath.
them. I got lots of them.
Did you planted them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got one that I had to have cut down. It was next to the house.
Because
It's right like that.
Yeah.
You're not taking.
Yeah,
away
we don't
from-
really have
I
much of a
couldn't
market.
sell it.
We don't have a market for black walnut. No one cuts it around here. There's not enough.
But it would be very beneficial for the wildlife. I
Yeah,
know that they factor that in, but.
yeah. So when I'm managing a forest, I'm looking for complex structure too. So I don't need I want nicely grown trees, but I want some mid-story, some understory, some dead wood. So you can account for all this with crop tree management. So if you just leave these here, some of them might be like hemlocks, and they're not going to do anything but good cover for birds. Some might die and fall over. Some woodpeckers will be in. Some birds will use the nest. So nice complex structure. This doesn't do anything to this tree. This tree really doesn't care if this is here. No crown competition, and this root system need all the water and nutrients that it needs. So no problem. You don't have to worry about this tree. And the other reason I like to leave trees like that, if I'm in the woods and I'm cutting trees, I'm so-so with a chainsaw. If I drop a tree, this provides some physical protection if I'm not so good. If I'm skidding the tree out of the woods, I need to bump a tree, I can bump this one and not this beautiful tree. There's a whole bunch of reasons, physical protection from the sun, good wildlife structure. So you don't even worry about those. Leave them. They're not messing with these trees up here.
Does hemlock have any value?
It has value. It's lower on the scale of timber values. Hemlock is the lower value. It's like more towards what we think, like when I showed you the pallet prices, it's more in that range, $5 a ton kind of thing. It's sold by the board foot. It also can be sold as pulp, but it's definitely in the lower range of value. But the wildlife value is high. It's a very good species for wildlife.
Our land was logged before we bought it.
Yep.
And we have hemlock.
Yeah.
And we have hemlock.
They didn't want to cut the hemlock.
We have hemlock trees that are like this,
Yep.
massive.
Yep.
Massive.
So there's value there. A lot of loggers hate cutting it because it's such a pain to delimit too. It's tough to delim, So if there was pines and oaks and other things, they cut those. They said they did like a selective cut, Let's leave those to cover. And we'll take the other stuff that's easier to cut, more valuable.
Yeah, they left the cover
Yeah.
and they took everything else.
That's okay. It's something you can work with. I'm happy to maybe look at it with you sometime. I'm sure you could do something with it. Our hemlocks have the issue like in Candia in this area of the hemlock woolly adelgid and elongate hemlock scale. So I don't know if they're looking a little thin to you. We have some invasive insects that are doing a nasty job in our hemlocks around here.
I've been surprised by the amount of dead ones out there.
Yeah, this is probably what you've got going on. The good news is they're not very cold. The hemlock woolly adelgid is not super cold tolerant. This weather we're having now and maybe coming up this weekend might be enough to kill a bunch of it. Doesn't mean it's gone, but it'll give the trees a reprieve. So hemlock you can work with. It's a great for wildlife. Not super valuable, but.
Is there any value in limbing pine trees?
Like pruning them?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. It's tough to prove that value. The next generation when they're cutting the saw logs, you have to sort of keep track of that if you want to get more money for that. The mills want you to prove it. Oh, when did you prune these trees? Because I'm not going to pay you more. You could have pruned them 5 years ago and the wounds healed over. But yeah, there is value to prune trees, absolutely. And it can be fun and something to do in your woodlot. Yeah. You don't want to start picking your crop trees till they're at least 25 feet tall and 4 to 5 inches in diameter. Let them express their dominance when they're younger.
Well, if it were a pine, I'd have to start pruning it earlier than that. Pines don't regrow. So if you start when they're real small and keep doing it all the way up.
As long as you leave enough crown to make some food for themselves, right? You don't want to go too much, but you would like at least the first log to be clear, first 17 feet. Yeah. You want a full healthy crown. You don't want any of those heavy leaners, even if it's a nice looking tree that's at risk to fall over. You don't want V-shaped forks. You don't want V-shaped forks on your landscape trees either.
Is there any way you can grow trees, the bolls from the trees?
Burls?
Those go for 30 to 40,000, they tell me.
Now, we know a bit about burls. I just wrote a little thing about burls. We know about them, why they form, but we can't recreate it. If we could recreate it, they'd be grown commercially for artisans, right? But we can't. It's still a bit of a mystery how they form. Yeah. Right. But they are valuable. No V-shaped forks in your forest trees or your landscape trees because those V-shaped forks tend to break. I'd probably rather have a V-shaped tree in the woods than near my house. You want a nicely formed butt log, so one that can be a saw log in the future. No epicormic branches, so all those sprouts coming off the sides or the buds, you can see them, I'll show you. And if it's for money, you want a high value species, so the sugar maple, the pine, the red oak. This was a stand that had a crop tree release in it in Guilford. See all that nice growing space around all these high quality oaks. So that's perfect. What you want to avoid is things like Epicormic Sprouts, like off of this black birch. Right? You don't want that. Now on this oak, sometimes you see it on slower growing oaks or some of the poorer sites. Well, there's these little dormant buds. I don't know if you can see them. They're here. If you release this tree too much, these sprout. And instead of having clear wood, you got wood with knots in it. Right, so these wouldn't make ideal crop trees. So you got to look them over closely. Just to prove, does it work a little bit? This is from a study, not a crop release study, but this is in Rockingham County from a woodlot owner that I work with. Let's just look at tree 1 and tree 2. Tree 1 has a small crowded top, sits by the road. Between 2000 and 2014, 15 growing seasons, that tree only grew 1.7 inches in diameter. But this tree with a good open top grew 4 inches in diameter. This one was basically released like a crop tree, right? So crowded top, good top. Look at the difference in growth. And these other ones with the good tops, they typically grew, they grew a lot more than this one that was crowded in a poor growing site. So does it work? Yeah, it does. There's been some research. If you look at the number of sides released over a 5-year period, and again, like oaks, they don't respond really quick. It takes a few years for them to respond, but if you release one side over 5 years based on, like a control, got a 1/4 inch more growth. 2 sides, 4/10. 3 sides, 6/10. 4 sides over 5 years, 8/10 of an inch. Over a decade, that's 1.6 inches in diameter growth, and that's for a tree, that's significant to get that much more growth. Here's Dr. Ward from Connecticut. He started on trees that were 12 years old. They did crop tree thinning and they did some projections. They could get 12-inch trees, which is a saw log, in 52 years, 16-inch trees, which could be veneer logs, starting to be veneer logs in 68 years. With the traditional thinning, they compared it 62 years versus 82 years. And if you do no thinning, it takes 79 years to get to a 12-inch tree, 105 years to get to a 16-inch tree.
What kind of tree?
Oaks. This is in Connecticut, so they're very oak, but also black birch too. Very oak focused there in Connecticut. So you can just see how much quicker these trees grew with crop tree management. And if you're trying to grow trees and get them to saw log size, that could be important, especially if you're a younger landowner and you want to get a cut out of it, before you retire, right? Here's another study from the I think West Virginia. They did crop tree release, 16-year-old stand, 55, 80-year-old. What happens when they did the crop tree release? Actually, the height growth slowed down. See what you think of this. The diameter growth increased. The crown diameter, so the crown got bigger when they did the crop tree release. And then the clear stem actually got a little bit smaller. Not by much, by a little bit. That's because the crown was filling in. So that makes a lot of sense, actually. If you have trees that are not thinned, one thing they focus on most is growing tall, because they got to get up to the sun and they have competitors. If you thin them, they don't have to grow so tall, but they realize there's sun to the side, and so their crowns grow out, right? And they start making more food, and what do? They make a bigger stem. And that's why forests are thin. It's not for height growth. Trees, height growth is kind of fixed. I mean, it depends on the site, but it's really the diameter growth that we influence by our thinning. And then the clear stem, well, it reduced a little bit because, the crown's getting bigger, but it's not a big deal. The tree's growing so fast. So if you're a landowner, you want to institute this on your own land, it's good to keep track of the trees. If you ever see numbers in the woods, someone's probably doing this or tracking trees over time, a DBH line, so they can measure that every few years on tree number, so they know which tree they're looking for. And you can track your growth. So you go track from, 2018 to 2019, 4/10 of an inch, maybe you track 10 trees. That's your projected growth over a decade. After a decade, then you could sum up all these and divide by 10 and figure out about how fast your stand is growing per decade. So I don't know if any of you ever shop at the Hannafords in Northwood, the sign is there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I always use this, so good forestry doesn't have to be complicated. The sign, I can't even.
How many accidents?
Yeah.
Reading
I
this?
can't even, yeah,
Good sign.
right, so it doesn't have to be complicated, it's about giving the crowns a little bit of growth. You can read forestry textbooks and all that stuff, but if you wanna institute some of this in your own land, it's pretty simple, give your best trees a little bit more room to grow, that's all.
Is that a real sign?
That's
Yeah.
That's,
Oh
you
my God.
can drive up that Hannaford's right now.
Difference in Northwood, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know that sign,
Yeah.
actually.
Left-hand turn.
I use that in a lot of my preaching,
That's
like, this has to
Yeah.
be too complicated.
Wow.
So like, so when can you make a left turn? I don't even know, But anyways, so I hope I didn't bore you, and I know it's
No.
late, but.
No, we
No,
thank
this
you
was
very
very
much.
good.
This was
Thank you.
excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've got a probably 4 or 5 acre piece
Mhm.
that's basically ash and sugar maple.
Yeah,
The ash is gonna die out and thin the thing out on its own.
yep,
But the problem is now you're gonna have a basic monoculture. And that's not the best situation either, is it?
no, but if I had a sugar maple, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I mean, you're gonna have neighbors that have other diversity, and it's pretty rare to have a nice sugar maple stand,
Yeah.
and it's gonna happen anyway. So
And
if
then
you-
the next question is, if
I
you're
wouldn't worry about
talking trees 4 or 5 inches in diameter,
Yeah,
how far apart would you thin them out to?
I wouldn't worry too much about the spacing, except for the crowns.
Okay,
There's no recommended spacing of trees. I mean, if you have 50 nice trees
No,
on
well-
on an acre, they're 30 feet apart.
yeah,
roughly.
these, at this point, most of them aren't to the point of being productive trees that I can tap.
Yeah,
I know they're 4 or 5 inches. in
if you wanna grow
diameter.
for sugaring, then
Yeah.
I would do some crop tree release, and I would
Yeah.
thin those crown. I would even cut a few sugar maples that were really poor quality, that were
Yeah,
next to some really nice sugar maples.
Yeah.
It's all about developing a nice crown on those trees. I wouldn't overdo it, like
yeah,
bright sun
Right,
everywhere,
right.
but I would
yeah.
make sure the crowns are released all around. So I
Okay.
look up.
Never really thought
So
about
I
it
take-
that way, but it makes a lot of
That's
sense.
all, if the stems are close, that's okay, as long
Yeah.
as the crowns have space.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually have a couple
Good.
books on crop tree release, if any of you want one.
Mhm.
If you're interested to read about it, you're welcome to take one. And if you have woodlots or anyone in Candia that wants to look at woods, I'm happy to come out and look at woods and even talk, we could even mark a crop tree release together or something if you want to, if it's, makes sense.
Okay.
You just working Rockingham County?
Primarily, but every extension agent has statewide duties too, based on our funding. So I'll go anywhere there's need, but I'm here 80 to 90% of the time.
Who does up in the Farmington area?
Rebecca DiGirolamo. She's out of the Dover office. So if you have land up there and you need someone to look at it, you can call
Yeah,
her.
daughter and son-in-law and I have 120 acres up there.
Yeah, Rebecca will come out. I'll join her if you'd like. It's free of charge. Unbiased advice. We don't buy wood. You can do whatever you want with it. But if you want to talk forestry without any strings attached, give us a call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome resource.
We have ag agents too, so obviously, if you have livestock, Elena Enzian in our office, if you may know Elena, and we're looking to replace Nada's position, so we have lots of ag folks too, and we have people in Hillsborough office. If you have fruit trees and things, they're gonna come over here and help you out. So if you need any help, just let us
Cut
know.
all mine down.
Yeah.
Obviously, they haven't gone anywhere with hiring somebody for George's position then.
I don't think, but I probably will be replaced. Yeah, it just takes some time, you know. Has to run through the chain of command.
All right, well, thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And any of you that are watching on Zoom, we apologize for starting late, but somebody made the computer that belongs to the town disappear. Which I'll check on tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll check on that tomorrow. That is awesome.
I wish
I
I had
appreciate you
more
guys
trees.
inviting me down.
I wish
It's
I
always
had
fun
more
to
oak
talk
trees.
trees,
Very
yeah.
much appreciated.
I don't know what I have.
Hi, June.
Hi, hey Dick, we had a couple of people wanting to know about the recording, so let me know as soon as it's up.
Yes, Catherine and I will be putting hopefully we'll get it out on the website. On the same place where it is noticed.
All right, yeah, that's where I told him to go look.
What are you doing, talking on the phone?
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking on the phone. You drunk? No, I'm not drunk. I'm looking at all these trees.
Were you pulled over when you got pulled